All right, welcome to Bet the Edge. I'm Jay Croucher here with Drew Dinsick. A somber morning on Bet the Edge as we lament Bucks plus 2.5, Bucks plus 3 minus 120 going down in flames. Just an insipid performance all around. I knew we were in trouble, Drew, when Mike McCarthy went for it on 4th and goal and drew up an excellent play, and Dak Prescott ran into the end zone to make it, I think, 12-0 at the time. And if Mike McCarthy's making sound coaching decisions, then it was always going to be uphill. What did you make of the game?
I knew we were in trouble when Tom Brady threw a red zone pick, first time since 2019. That was a little eye opening. No, you're right. I think the major takeaways for the game, and yes, I lament backing the Bucks. Absolutely, that was pretty clearly, and I feel like the spirit of yesterday's pod was, there's clearly strong support for Dallas in the market here. Like there may be something we don't know. And certainly Dallas came in very, very healthy, very, very strong approach. They looked like the team that I would have said was my top power rated NFC team in the beginning to middle of November. Much more so than what we saw from them coming down the stretch. That could be health related. It could be that they just kind of, over the balance of the season, identified what worked best for them and kind of put all that in a box and said, save it for the playoffs. If that's what if that's the case and they have another one of those performances in them, then this team is dangerous. The market is very, very, very hot on them next week against the Niners, and we'll get to that. But I think most of the takeaways you come out of that game with are positive Cowboys takeaways. People like to dump on the loser, which is fine. Like, yeah, I mean, the Bucks were pathetic. Like, dump on them all you want. Like, the offensive approach, particularly to open the game, I thought was pathetic. No idea why you were attacking Dallas, where you were attacking them. Even on the one drive that they succeeded, Brady was throwing interceptable passes left and right, and just in general, like, they were trying to do it the very hardest way possible, and so it didn't ever really feel like it was going to be successful as you were watching it play out in the early stages. So congratulations to Dallas. It's worth noting that Dak Prescott came in. A lot of people were asking questions about his ability to perform at that level in a high pressure game. He answered all of those questions with an emphatic, absolutely, I can. That was his most impressive performance in a playoff environment that I've ever seen by a margin. And he was the definition of poise over the balance of this, later stages of the first quarter through the second quarter. His design rollouts and his instinctual rollouts were all just absolutely perfect on note. Well-timed, well-executed. He made outstanding decisions, and in general, just carved apart what is rated as a relatively strong and healthy defense. So credit to the Cowboys overall, and credit to Dak Prescott in particular. The giant question swirling now: we haven't seen the Cowboys do it 2 weeks in a row in freaking forever. Can they?
No. Well, yeah. I backed the Cowboys last night plus 4.5 against San Francisco. So changed tack very quickly after fading the Cowboys. I think what we talked about yesterday is that, if Dak Prescott looks like the guy that lit up the Eagles a month ago in Dallas, then the Cowboys were probably going to win. And he looked even better than that guy against Philadelphia, and they won. I think what I was gambling on, I think what we were gambling on, was that the Bucks had the better quarterback in the matchup, and last night they absolutely did not. I think a lot of people are focusing on the Tampa Bay offense and how decrepit it looked. To me, the defense was just as bad. The fact that they just couldn't get off the field on third down at all. The fact that they had no pass rush whatsoever, but they were still committed to only sending 4. And the combination of only sending 4, getting no pass rush, and then having just comical breakdowns in the secondary meant that Dallas did whatever they wanted. Dak was expert last night. He was magnificent, looking off the safety for the touchdown to Dalton Schultz. That's just peak Dak. Yeah, if he looks like that again next week, then they're very live to beat the Niners. And so now that line now is down to 4. San Francisco favored at home. The total is ticked up, opened at 45, already up to 46. So I bet the Cowboys last night plus 4.5. I think that this line should be 3.5. A little bit worried about the rest element with San Francisco having 2 extra days, which doesn't seem particularly fair. But what do you make? What's your early read on this one?
I think your takeaways are fair there. And honestly, the Tampa defense just looked like a unit that hadn't played together all season. Like, if this was an NBA best of 7 series, do they play that way every game? No, probably not. They probably, improve over the balance of a series, but it's one and done, and they are done, dead and buried. Dallas, on the other hand, did come out of that with another injury to their secondary. Not exactly where you want to be heading into a matchup with a team that has a coordinator like Shanahan and has many weapons that can, do damage in the secondary as San Francisco does. So Dallas is in a tight spot, in my opinion, defensively in this one. Although, if you look at kind of the performance of Brock Purdy over the balance of his time in San Francisco, you find a number of teams that don't have a meaningful pass rush. And we don't really know what Purdy's going to look like under duress. And for what it's worth, Dan Quinn pretty clearly had some stuff in his pocket that he had saved for the playoffs, innovative ways to get Parsons, locked in on good tackles to get pressure in that Tampa Bay game. And I would expect he has all of that up his sleeve. If he puts Parsons in there against Trent Williams, I'm going to be very angry, being any kind of positive Cowboys in this one. But, certainly the idea that Purdy is going to be facing, some real deal pressure is interesting to me, because I think there's a chance that he holds onto the ball too long, and that the ball hawks like the Diggses in the secondary can come away with some picks and put a little bit of, extra possessions for the Cowboys, shorter fields, and, make this a good game. Because otherwise this looks like an over game to me. I'm shocked that we're staring at a 46. Shocked.
Yes.
This is two offenses that are both capable, I think, on an average day of getting to 24 points against their opponent. And so why this didn't start at 47 or 47.5 is really surprising to me. Right now, of all of the lines on the board, sides and totals that we see for divisional week, the over in this game is the one that speaks the most to me. Looks like we're going to get beautiful weather in San Francisco on Sunday night. And I'm counting on Dak and company. Really, I'm counting on the Cowboys' commitment to move past the Zeke Elliott era and keep their offense fluid. We have questions about the Niners' defense. The Niners' defense got exposed at times against even the lowly Seattle Seahawks. The idea that that Dallas can put scoreboard pressure on this team and Dallas is live to win this game, I don't disagree with that. But for me, 4 or 3.5 is not quite enough points to get involved here, and I don't think it's going up. This looks like it's going down. So my guess is this closes 3.5. My guess is that the total takes a little bit of money to the over once the limits come up here. I think the over is the where you want to be. And I think you want to be over Dallas team total points even more than the game over, because there is a realistic chance that the pass rush here could neuter Brock Purdy. Yeah,
I'm with you. And there's a few reasons that I lean Dallas. One is a lot of my Dallas skepticism in the Tampa Bay game was that I thought there might have been something wrong with Dak to trigger a performance as bad as he had against Washington, where he's 14 for 37. Like, that's completely dispelled. Dak is fine. He's 100% healthy. He looked amazing last night. So that's not an issue at all. Dallas clearly going to have the better quarterback in this matchup. I think Purdy's been fine, and he's making the throws that he needs to. At the same time, he's had a lot of interceptions dropped. And when you look at the caliber of defenses that he's gone up against, Miami, who have been a banged up secondary all year, Tampa Bay, who have no pass rush, as we saw last night, Seattle, who have a bad defense, he's played them twice now, Commanders, good defense, he struggled in the first half in that game, then figured it out. And then the Raiders and decrepit and finished Cardinals team. Like, he hasn't been tested that much. Dallas, for whatever their flaws and injuries might be in the secondary, are clearly going to be, I think, the best defense that he's played to date by some margin. So that's a concern if you're on the Niners. And then the other thing that you raised is 49ers defense isn't what it was 6 weeks ago. Like, they've had poor performances. The Raiders game remains very strange. Maybe they just didn't show up for that game, but they were awful defensively in that game. They weren't great against the Commanders either. Taylor Heineke was completing 3rd and longs for fun in that game. And then against Seattle, they showed Certainly Ken Walker had a much better game than anyone would have expected there, and the Seahawks were able to move the ball in the first half. So I think you add all that up, and I think that Dallas are the right side here. I think the over, to your point, is the right side as well. And I just think that there have just been some warning signs with Purdy, and as someone who's been very invested in the Niners all season along a lot of fronts, I think I've seen every snap that Brock Purdy has played, and he throws the ball up for grabs, and he hasn't done it. He hasn't had to do it against a great defense yet. Now he's going to have to. And I just think back to how shell-shocked he looked on that first drive against Seattle, and maybe he's gotten that out of his system, but I would not trust Brock Purdy in a matchup where he's clearly the inferior quarterback.
I think that's very well said. And the two keys for this game are both on the Dallas side of the equation, which makes you really kind of think Dallas or pass, right? How effective is the pass rush going to be? How does Purdy handle it on that matchup? And then on the other side, my question for you, how do you rate the Dallas screen game? Because the part of if you go in specifically with that Raiders tape and some of the other tape that showed, some of the weaknesses of the Niners defense, it was a lot of the horizontal stuff, wide receiver screens, getting Tony Pollard into space. Like, I guess if you think Dallas can get it going via the screen, which takes a ton of the pressure off Dak, by the way, eliminates a lot of the pass rush strengths of the Niners. What is your read on the screen game for Dallas? Do you think that would be part of their approach, and do you think it will be successful?
Yeah, well, I think in a way, and maybe this is getting too in the weeds, but I think in a way the 49ers run defense being so excellent, despite what Ken Walker was able to do for stretches, is that hopefully it's so good that it just triggers Dallas moving away from Zeke very quickly, because all frustrations around Dallas on offense have been just the abundance of Zeke carries. Thinking back to that Eagles game a month ago, the way that they were just running Zeke first, second down, it was just agonizing to watch as someone who needed Dallas in that game. So I don't think they're going to be able to do that against San Francisco, because it's just going to fail and fail quickly. And so the hope would be is that it's going to be a lot more Tony Pollard. And Tony Pollard was very involved last night. I think that bodes well if you are on Dallas against San Francisco, and just how dynamic he is, not just as a runner, but also in the screen game. I think that should be key. And I think the San Francisco defense, maybe it still is the best in the league, but I don't think we have an absolute elite, no-brainer, historic #1 defense this season. So I do think that Dallas will be able to move the ball. And I think that with what we saw last night, with what we've seen overall the past 6 weeks from Dallas, I think you just throw that Washington game in the bin. I think you just write that off, and I'm not really reading too much into that. I think they were probably just looking ahead to the next week. They knew that the Eagles weren't going to lose to the Giants. And so I'm prepared to mostly write that game off now. And I think that Dallas are very live in this game. Let's quickly talk about the futures market. I don't think there's much value on the board in the NFC. The Eagles price quickly corrected itself, going from there was some plus 180 about after the Giants won. That's now into plus 155. I still think if I had to make a bet on the board, that would be the one, but I don't feel great about any of it. Here's the question for you, though, Drew. How do you power rate the Eagles versus the Niners? Just not necessarily who has the better path to winning the NFC, but just who's the better team right
now? So the Niners, I feel like we're the biggest losers of wild card weekend in terms of future equity. If they drew Tampa, they're licking their chops. If they drew the Giants, they're licking their chops. If they drew the Vikings, they basically get a divisional bye, right? All of those teams they match up so well against. They got the one team that matches up well against them, I think, in the Cowboys. So Niners take a shot in terms of how likely they are to win this round. And then even more than that, the Eagles now get an opponent that they've beaten comfortably twice in order to kind of sort out some of the issues that they may be facing in terms of injury, absence, and just general health, because the Eagles have two power numbers for me. One is Jalen Hurts is 100% fine, and he's in his MVP form from beginning of December, late November. That power number to me, Eagles are a clear 1.5 better than the Niners at full strength. The power number with Jalen Hurts dealing with the shoulder injury, less than 100%. combined with some of the other absences that they have. And, I don't really have high confidence that Lane Johnson is 100%. I think you're going to be missing some bodies in the secondary for the Eagles here in terms, Sweat, certainly, Maddox, maybe. These are guys that matter for the depth of that defense and doing what they want to do with their plan A defensively. So, considering the state of the Eagles from a health standpoint, their floor is, 1.5 points worse than the Niners for me. We're going to answer a lot of those questions this week, right? So we'll get some certainty. You get another week of, recovering from the shoulder injury for Hurts before you have to play the Eagles if you are the Niners. And so I think the likelihood that NFC Championship game is full strength Hurts is higher. So again, kind of another reason that the Niners lose a little bit of future equity because of the, how it broke this week. So, I mean, the numbers on the board do look fair. I think the Eagles are the only small value in it is minuscule. But it also is conditional on Hurts being healthy, which is not a guarantee. So, does my relative pricing of Philly, San Francisco sound right to you?
Yeah, I think just with the Eagles' concerns on the health front that I would make San Francisco the slightly better team on neutral. But I mean, it's just guesswork because you don't know. It's not just like Hurts' shoulder is obviously the big thing, but it's also, to your point, it's Johnson, Maddox, Sweat, Gardner-Johnson. Like all these guys have question marks. If they were all healthy, then the Eagles are the best team, but we just don't know what they're going to look like. And I agree, there's no real angle in the NFC market at the moment, but we will jump into, I think, a market that is more exploitable, which is Super Bowl MVP. But firstly, just a reminder, if you don't have the NBC Sports Predictor app, go download it now. The contests are free and easy to play, and you have a shot to win thousands by this weekend by predicting what will happen in college basketball, the Premier League, and the Divisional Round, including a shot at $100,000 by guessing the outcome between the Jags and the Chiefs. All right, Super Bowl MVP. This market is a lot less liquid than the conference market, than the Super Bowl market, so it is a little bit more exploitable. Patrick Mahomes is the favorite at plus 380, then Josh Allen, and then basically all of the quarterbacks, Burrow, Purdy, Prescott, and so on. So, look, if you're looking at the top of the market, I think it starts with Patrick Mahomes. So he's plus 380. The Chiefs are plus 300. Just a very simple way to look at this is that once you math it out, if you think that Patrick Mahomes is more than an 83% chance to win Super Bowl MVP if the Chiefs win the Super Bowl, then you're better off betting Patrick Mahomes to win Super Bowl MVP than you are backing the Chiefs at plus 300 to win the Super Bowl. I think Mahomes is more than an 83% chance. It can't be that much more, but I do think it's closer to 90% or potentially even above that. So if you're looking to back the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl, I would just back Mahomes MVP. Is there anyone in this market that leaps out to you?
I've struggled with what to do with Philly because of a key point that we may have talked about, and I can't remember if it was you and me or me and someone else, but doing too much content this time of year. The Hurts price is interesting because there is now a weird situation where a lot of voters had kind of decided that Hurts was the rightful MVP before he got hurt. And so there's a little bit of a makeup vote for him. Right, which I think swings the Philly pool, even though there are lots of other realistic candidates for Philly. All of a sudden, you have a situation where Hurts doesn't have to do anything special to be the guy if Philly wins, just because there's sort of a we owe him recognition for his season. Right, so he is starting with a huge head start now, potentially, if Philly wins, and obviously 7-1 is better than the price you're going to get on Philly to win the Super Bowl right now. And what are they? They have to take care of business as 7.5 point favorites at home, and then they get another home game to punch their ticket to the Super Bowl. And honestly, the entire kind of concept of betting any futures at all, the entire playoff so far has been take some shots in the NFC because you're hoping, and it's still not out of the realm of possibility that chaos could ensue on the AFC side. Right? Like there are 3 elite teams and one very good team still alive in the AFC. And either an unexpected could happen and somebody like Jacksonville emerges, in which case somebody like Philly might be 3-point favorites in the Super Bowl, and all of a sudden now you're holding us 7-1 on Hurts and he's the favorite to win. That is a realistic possibility where you could scoop equity just by taking care of business and letting chaos ensue on the other side of the bracket. And then the other outcome is whoever emerges from this mess in the AFC is battered and beaten and bruised. If Burrow comes through and beats the Bills, none of us are going to be surprised. If Burrow does it again against Mahomes and the Chiefs, none of us are going to be surprised. But he's going to take the field in the Super Bowl with, the B squad blocking for him again. And, going up against your monsters on the D line, all of a sudden, Philly, Cincy, pick them. There's a lot of positives that come out of betting on anything at NFC at this point, where you are just, your team takes care of business in the weaker half of the draw, and then chaos ensues on the other half, and the equity comes into your pot. So that's sort of the only angle I really see to attack. And so if I had to only just take one price, I'm looking for Hurts one.
Yeah, I think with Hurts, again, the equation is he's plus 700 to win MVP, and the Eagles are plus 475 on PointsBet to win the Super Bowl. So if you think that Jalen Hurts is more than a 72% chance to win MVP, if the Eagles win the Super Bowl, then you're better off backing Jalen Hurts MVP. I think he probably is more than a 72% chance, just because when you just think about it, the fact that they're most likely they're going to play the Chiefs or the Bills in the Super Bowl. Yes, chaos could ensue, but that would be the favorite outcome. And if Jalen Hurts is going to win 3 playoff games, including beating Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen, that means that he is very likely healthy and is back to being at least close to the guy who was for a time MVP favorite. And so the total in the Super Bowl, if it's against Kansas City or Buffalo, or even if it's against Cincinnati, is going to be around 50. It's going to be a high-scoring game you would expect. And in that type of game, Jalen Hurts is going to very likely be the MVP if Philadelphia wins. So I agree. I think that that's value. I think that you ride the upside of the Eagles and Hurts being healthy in that sense, as opposed to just backing them to win the Super Bowl. The only other Eagle, and really only other guy, full stop, on the board that interests me right now is Miles Sanders, who is out there at 200 to 1.
Whoa.
Not an inspiring bet, Miles Sanders to win Super Bowl MVP, but at the same time, 200 to 1 means that in regard to their Super Bowl price, if you think Miles Sanders is at least a 3% chance to win MVP if the Eagles win the Super Bowl, then 200 to 1 is a bet. So that is a little bit too big. It's 70 to 1 on PointsBet, which I think is probably closer to right, but there are some bigger prices about. And look, Sanders, I think he's had 3 games this year of at least 134 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns, and that's very likely. Well, it's potentially enough to win Super Bowl MVP. So he would be the other look there, and that kind of, if they are playing with a lead, Sirianni does love to run the ball in the second half. So I think that would be the angle. Any long shots on the board that jump out to you?
I mean, 200 to 1 on Sanders sounds pretty tasty. So I can't hate anyone who makes that bet. But just out of curiosity, I've heard people make case for Christian McCaffrey. I've heard people make cases for, some of the other running back candidates here, which I am not buying into because, Jay, do you remember the last time a running back won Super Bowl MVP?
Terrell Davis, right?
Oh, wow. Off the top of your head. Very, very good, man. That was incredible. Yeah. Incredible. Yes. He won, Super Bowl. What was that? 2000. It was Elway's first Super Bowl. I guess that was 98. Terrell Davis, 30 carries, 157 yards, 3 touchdowns in that game. So it's been a while and it takes a lot. But a 3 touchdown performance from a running back absolutely puts you in the mix. And there's plenty of games this season where Philly has got it done late by, salting away a win on the ground. So Sanders being that guy isn't crazy. So I will price shop a little bit and see if I can find some of that like you. But the only skin I have in the game is we took a couple of wild long shots on some Niners who are not Brock Purdy, which I think is a fun way to shop too. Because if the Niners win, the idea that that is up for grabs, I think is real.
Yes, there's still some 150 to 1 about on George Kittle, which I feel worse about after seeing what Deebo Samuel looked like. So I think that's probably about fair now. I was hoping that Purdy would continue hunting for Kittle. And maybe he will in a Super Bowl, but I think Nick Bosa as well. There's still 80 to 100 to 1 out there, which is maybe a more interesting look. But yeah, I think the bets are Hurts, Mahomes, and my man Miles Sanders, who people just kind of scoff at them. Miles Sanders isn't winning Super Bowl MVP. It's like, yeah, I agree with you. He's probably not, but 200 to 1's too big for a starting running back on a team that loves to run the ball. That is plus 155 to make the Super Bowl right now. It's just too big. All right,
I gotta ask you an opinion question. One more guy.
Yeah.
Let's say that the very possible happens, and this is the Bengals. From out of the AFC, does that open up the door to more defensive players because of the potential 5-sack game? Micah Parsons, are we on the new dad Micah Parsons coming home with 5 sacks in the Super Bowl and being the difference for Dallas?
I was looking at his price yesterday because before they beat the Bucs, he was available at 150 to 1. But even I still think I didn't back it, and he's 80 to 1 on PointsBet. He's still a defensive player. I think there have been 4 defensive players who have won the Super Bowl MVP in the past 26 years or something. And yes, if anyone's going to win it, it's going to be Micah Parsons or Nick Bosa. But I struggle to get Parsons to more than maximum 10% of Super Bowl MVP equity for Dallas. It's so hard. He'd need 3 sacks, maybe 2 sacks and a forced fumble or a return touchdown. It's pretty hard to get there. So I mean, he's live. He's as live as any defensive player will be, but
yeah.
I just can't. I can't.
Yeah, if they face the Chiefs, then he's dead man walking. That's a dead money in the pool. But against the Bills or the Bengals, he's live. I think honestly, if it's against the Bengals, that line you just said, that's your kind of baseline expectation for him in that game.
Yep. No, I agree there. All right. Before we get into Giants Eagles, a reminder to download the Roto World app to receive breaking player news all season long. Stay ahead of the competition by favoriting players on your roster. Get the latest injury updates, player news, and much more delivered right to your phone. It's available in the App Store today. All right, Giants Eagles. The line opened basically Eagles -7. Now it's up to -7.5 on PointsBet and pretty much everywhere. The total is 48.5. What do you like in this game, Drew?
Yeah, so I misread the market yesterday morning when we were talking about it. It was sitting at a flat 7. My opinion was if it comes off either way, it's going to go to 6.5 because somebody's going to make just an educated guess that Hurts isn't 100% and try to get ahead of injury news like limited participant in practice, which I think is probably coming for him. If he is a full participant in practice, on the first injury report of the week for Philly, that'll be a little bit of a surprise considering the comments we heard from him last week. And so, there could, if there's going to be a move, I still think it's going to be in the direction of the Giants here. But yesterday it went sincerely from a flat 7 to a flat 7.5. So there's confidence out there that Philly's going to be right, that Hurts is going to be right for game time. But, just in terms of trying to capture best of the price, I am still very concerned that you see injury reports that and just in general commentary from the team that tries to damp expectations for Hurts, right? It seems like there's going to be a little bit of an effort here to kind of try to take the pressure off of him externally by the stuff that they say to the media. And if that comes in the context of building in excuses by saying he is still dealing with an injury, then that's not crazy to me. So if there's a market sentiment move based on the quotes and the team actions and activities, I still think you could get a flat 7 if you want it for the Eagles later this week. And in that same context, if you want the Giants, you're looking at a pretty decent size limit they'll rate you right now at a 7.5 that may not be there come Saturday. So just in terms of market dynamics, this looks like the Giants are the move right now. And the fact that the total is up to 48.5, I think is correct. I think that in general, some of the books that are stuck at a flat 48 out there are going to eventually cave and move up a hair. And I think that comes on the context of the Eagles not being fully healthy. You mentioned, the three key injuries that I have been very, very carefully watching: Josh Sweat, Avonte Maddox, and CJ Gardner-Johnson. All three guys matter. The Eagles defense is only their top power rated number if those guys are out there, and they don't have a ton of depth. The guys they bring off the bench to backfill there are susceptible to giving up big plays, and so if this is a defense that is not at full strength, all of a sudden the idea that Kafka and Dable can cook up an offensive scheme that gets the Giants into the 21, 24 point range, I think is a baseline expectation, and at that point this thing is flying over 48.
Yeah, I am on an island with this one, and all the smart people I talk to tell me I'm wrong, but I don't understand why this line isn't bigger. Off the top of my head, when I was guessing, I thought it was going to be -9, and I was immediately told, no, that's way wrong. It's going to open 7, and I was wrong on that, but I still don't. I just think this Giants rushing defense, they fixed their pass defense largely with the Dory Jackson coming back, with McKinney coming back, but the rush defense is still really bad. It's the worst rush defense in the league over the last 6 weeks of the regular season. It's 30th in rush defense EPA on the season, and they're going up against the Philadelphia Eagles, who beat them 48-22 just over a month ago. I don't think this Giants team is as good offensively as they looked against Minnesota, who have one of the worst pass defenses in the league, and Daboll put Kevin O'Connell in a clown suit. He's not going to have that clown suit on hand for Nick Sirianni. And I just think that I'm not really sure it's going to matter if Jalen Hurts' shoulder is that bad in terms of throwing the ball. I think that this is a gigantic mismatch. And I just go back to the fact that in the past 9, Giants have won 3 of their past 9 games. Like, they're not that good. The teams they've beaten, yes, they look great on offense against Minnesota, but then they've beaten the Jeff Saturday Colts and Taylor Heineke. Like, congratulations. I think the Giants are a lot better than they've shown in the middle part of the season when they were really banged up, and they are healthier on defense, but I just don't think there's anything there from a rushing defense perspective. I think the linebackers are no good, and I think that the Eagles are going to do whatever they want on the ground, and Hurts will be good enough. And also, the pass defense, even if it is banged up, it's going to be a lot better than Minnesota's, and I think there'll be some resistance there. So, yeah, I lean Eagles, but I say that with some caution that everyone I speak to who is clever pushes back and says this is going to be closer than I think. But yeah, any cold water to throw on that?
I mean, I would be with you in lockstep if I had confidence Hurts was right. Sure. Because the Giants defense is smoke and mirrors. It is all pass rush. It is blitz. It's classic Wink Martindale. Classic, right? And you have already identified the weakest unit in the game by far is the linebacking core for the Giants. Realistic chance Jalen Smith gets 100% of the defensive snaps here. And if you don't think that Nick Sirianni has keyed up some plays to put Jalen Smith in hell, then I have news for you. That is exactly plan A here. If the pass rush is not getting home because the Eagles offensive line, again, Lane Johnson, huge question mark, but at full strength, the Eagles offensive line is the best in football, period, full stop. And you give Jalen Hurts time with a healthy shoulder and his mobility, dual threat quarterback with a kind of a balanced offensive approach, the Eagles should not really have trouble sniffing 30 points, right? And at that point, you're just your fingers crossed that there's a little bit of a regression here for the Giants offensively after what we saw last week, and that they get stuck in the teens. And a game state where the Eagles are comfortably ahead and socking away a lead with 10-minute drives and just running success on every third and medium and third and short, and the Giants are going for it on 4th down because they're at such a deficit. I mean, that speaks to an Eagles cover and is certainly, a reasonable chunk of the potential outcomes here. So I get where you're at, but a ton of that to me depends on Hurts being able to throw the ball 15 yards downfield along the sidelines with accuracy and not hesitating to take the yards that are available in the running game if the pressure forces him out of the pocket. And both of those things are conditional on his shoulder being 100% in my mind. So that's, I think, why we are where we are in this price that may not seem 100% right.
Yeah, I would take heart in the fact that, like, Hurts did play in week 18, and if he was really, really hurt, I think they could have gotten through that game with Gardner Minshew against the Giants backup. So, and he didn't look good in that game, but at least he was taking hits and throwing the ball. So I think he will look better. He probably won't be 100%, but again, it's just speculating. But I think he will be at a healthy enough level for the Eagles to cover, but certainly important to monitor the rest of that injury report because it is significant. All right. We are done. Don't forget to check out NBCSportsEdge.com for more information to help you with your wagers. Thanks for those watching on the NBC Sports YouTube channel. And if you're listening to us in podcast form, please remember to subscribe and rate us. From Jay Croucher and Drew Dinsick, we'll be back tomorrow.